Welcome back to the BCS Business Technology Spreadsheets and Financial Calculators course. This is week 5. We're going to be talking a little bit about the HP10B2 calculator and a little bit about how we can use it in a business setting. We're going to cover a couple different things today. We're going to talk about some basics with the calculator, and then we're going to talk about understanding the time value of money. And how we can use the calculator to make some of those calculations once we've understood the time value of money a little bit better. So first we'll talk just a little bit about the calculator. The HP10B2 calculator has all the basic functions that you would have in a normal calculator: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Along with that, there are a bunch of other keys that have functions specifically related to various financial calculations. Just so we can get a little bit clear on how to use a calculator, I will be switching between the PowerPoint and a video of me actually using a calculator by hand so that it's a little bit easier to understand what's going on. So when you first get your calculator, obviously you can turn it on using the on button down in the lower left corner. It's important to remember the clear button, and also going forward, just so that we're a little bit clear about what I am talking about, this red key with the down arrow is going to be referred to as the secondary key or the second key. This is important because on top of all of the normal functions that the calculator has, using the second key will allow you to access all of these other sets of functions. So if we look up at this top row, we have a couple of things that we'll be talking about a little bit later, but we have all of these different functions: N, I per YR, PV, payment, future value. If we use the secondary key, that allows us to access these secondary functions down here. That'll make a little bit more sense as we go moving forward, but it's just important that you understand that. Additionally, to the normal clearing, you can also use secondary and clear all, and I would recommend that you do secondary clear all almost every time you open and turn on your calculator at the start of each session. Next, we're going to talk just a little bit about how you can change the number of decimal places and changing if you use decimals or commas. Changing the number of decimal places will allow you to get outputs that are a little bit easier to look at and to understand. Obviously, this is how you do that right here. I'm going to cut to a video of me using the calculator to show that, and then I'm also going to show how to change between decimals and commas. Some people that live outside the United States are going to be more familiar with using one or the other, depending on what part of a number you're talking about. So I'm going to cut to a video of the actual calculator so that we can talk just really quick about how to do this. Okay, so I just wanted to switch over to this really quick so that everyone could get a little bit more of a clear picture of what's going on, and I'm going to do this periodically throughout these videos just so that we can get a better picture of how to use the calculators and the actual keystrokes that are going on in the background here. So just really quick, what we just talked about on those slides. To be able to change the number of decimal places, you'll notice here that I'm showing 4 decimal places. To change that, you'll hit this red secondary key, which drops us down into all of these different red functions on all the buttons. Down here on the equals button, we see display. So I'm going to click the display button, and then I will touch the number of decimal places that I want. So if I want 8, I'll then click 8. So secondary key, display or equals button, and then the number of decimal places that I want. I'm going to set it back to 4. And then if you want to switch between commas or decimal points, as some people from different parts of the world will use commas or decimal points, depending on where they're from, you'll just hit that secondary key again, and then hit the decimal point button down here, which is the secondary function of this button, is to switch between commas and decimal points, and I'll click that. And now you'll notice that this has changed to be a comma instead of a decimal point. And if I want to switch back, secondary key, and then hit this button one more time, and then you'll notice that that is switched back to a decimal point. Now that we've gone over that, I just want to make the reminder that the HP10B2 calculator can be used as a simple calculator to do addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. However, it is able to do more complex financial calculations. And we're going to talk about understanding the time value of money so that we can eventually use the calculator to do those more complex calculations. So first, the time value of money helps us to understand how the same amounts of money can have different values depending on when we receive them. Now, to help this make a little bit more sense, I'm going to ask this question. Would you rather have $100 today or wait a year and get that same $100? It would make sense to take the $100 today. Because why would you wait an entire extra year just to get the exact same amount of money? Now consider a second situation. What about getting $100 now or $101 in a year? Most people would probably agree it's probably not worth it to wait that whole extra year just to get one more dollar. What if I offered you $100 now or $150 in a year? Now it might make sense to wait that entire year because we're going to make an extra $50 just by waiting. What if I offered you $300 in 3 years or $100 right now? See, the farther we go into the future, the more money we would need to have it be worth the same in the present value. Basically, we're going to be learning how to use the time value of money to figure out how much different amounts of money are worth in different points in time, and then how we can use that to make decisions for business. Within our time value of money calculations, we have 5 important variables. Now, if you look at the top of your calculator, these top buttons right here are going to be those 5 variables, and I'm going to explain what each of them is right now. So first we have the present value, PV. Next we have I per YR. This is sometimes referred to as R, or the interest rate. Next is N. That's our number of periods that we're using in our calculation. This can be in years. This could also be in months. We'll talk about how to change those things around if it is in years or months. Then there's the PMT button, which means payment, and FV, which is future value. It's important to know that if we have 4 of these variables, we can solve for the missing one. Now, to illustrate that a little bit, I'm going to show you some of the equations that are going on in the background when you're going to be using your calculator. Basically, if we look here, we have the present value. Of our 5, we have on this side of the equation, we have the present value, we have our R, we have our T, and future value. In this case, these 3 are all that we need to be able to solve for the future value. You'll see in the next equation, solving for present value, we only need the future value, we need our R, or our interest rate, and then the amount of time, which is shown here in N, and it's just the same. Sometimes they use N, and sometimes we use T to represent the number of periods of time. I just wanted to show these 2 equations so that it was a little bit more clear what's going on in the background when we're using our calculators to do time value of money calculations. So now let's go over using the calculator a little bit to do such calculations. The best way I think to do this is going to be to use a little bit of an example, and that way we can learn how to identify the different variables, and then we'll talk about how to enter them into the calculator. So for this example, we're going to suppose that a bank is giving us a car loan, and we're going to pull together the example that way. So the bank is going to give us a $5 loan, or excuse me, a 5-year loan. And for our example, you only have to make 1 payment a year. Now I recognize that that's not realistic. Car loans are usually paid in once a month, so 12 times a year, but just for the sake of the example and to make it a little bit easier, we're going to pretend that we only have to make 1 payment each year. The bank is going to give us a 7% interest rate on our loan, and they're going to give us a $10,000 loan today so that we can go buy the car. Now we're going to calculate the yearly payment that we have to make. Now, if you look down here, you'll see that we have the different values kind of spelled out. So the number of years, or the time periods, N, is 5, and we can see that here. We have a 5-year loan. The interest per year, otherwise known as our rate or our interest rate, is 7, because we see here that it's 7%. It's important to note, and I'll show you this on the calculator, that this is entered in as just a 7, not 0.07, not as a fraction. It's simply entered in as the number 7. The present value is $10,000 because we are being given $10,000 today. The future value is inferred to be 0. We don't need to put that in because once we've paid off the loan, it will be worthless. Now we're going to go find the payment. And I'm going to switch over to looking at our calculator so we can go over this. Now to show how to make this calculation on the calculator, we're going to do it here. First, we know that n is 5. Actually, really quickly, let's remember that we want to clear everything first. So I always click the secondary button and then clear all. Now you'll notice something when I do that really quickly. When I click clear all, you see 1 and then PYR. That tells us that currently my calculator is set to 1 payment per year. Now this is extremely important. I want everyone to click secondary and clear all. If you see any number other than 1 there right now, what I want you to do is to hit the number you want. In this case, we want it to be 1. Then the secondary button, then this payment button up here, and you see that the secondary function is payments per year. That way you can set that number of payments per year to 1. Some of you might see that it will say 2. When you clear all, we want it to say 1, so you'll go 1, secondary payment. Now, back to our example here. We know that we're getting a 5-year loan, so our time periods, our N, is 5. So I'm going to go ahead and type 5, and then click N up here. Next, we know that our I per YR, our interest rate, is 7%. So I'm going to type 7 and then hit the I per YR button. Now that's entered in. Next, we know that the present value of the loan is $10,000. So I'll go ahead and type in $10,000 and then click the present value button right here. We don't need to put in future value. It's inferred to be 0 for this question. And then we can simply push the payment button, and that will give us our payments per year. So our payment each year will be $2,438, and then you'll see that these are decimal points, about 91 cents. Go back and watch that again if any of that was not clear on how to enter in each of those numbers. Then we can go ahead and clear. Moving along, we're going to do 3 more examples just to get some practice with this because I think it's the best way to learn how to use your calculator to start to understand time value of money. So our next example is going to be, if we have an investment that will be worth $1,200 in 4 years with an annual interest rate of 5%, what is the value of that investment today? Now let's think about what that's asking. It wants us to find the present value of this investment. So we go ahead and we recognize that here we see our time period is 4 years. So our N equals 4. Next, we see that we have an annual interest rate of 5%. So our I per YR, our interest rate per year, is 5. The investment is worth $1,200 in 4 years. So that tells us that it's a future value of $1,200. Now let's switch over to the calculator to see how we can calculate this present value. Okay, so for this example, we just saw that it's a 4-year period, so we're going to click 4 and hit N. Next, we saw that we have an interest rate per year, an annual interest rate of 5%, so we're going to click 5 and then the I per YR button. We see that this investment will be worth $1,200 in 4 years, which means we're dealing with a future value here. So we're going to do $1,200, put that in as our future value, and then we can simply click the present value, and it tells us that the present value is negative 987. Now we're going to talk about this over and over, but when we're inputting these values, present value and future value need to have opposite signs. So in this case, we put in future value as a positive 1,200. That means that this present value is going to be in a negative. So that just tells us that this investment, if it were made today, would be worth $987. Our next example problem is if you have $100 today and you can invest it at a 10% annual interest rate, what will it be worth in 10 years? So 10 years is our time period, N equals 10. Our interest per year also equals 10. Our present value equals $100 today. What will our future value of this investment be worth? Now, a little mistake here. This present value should actually probably be a negative. Now, the reason that is, and I left it like this so that I could point this out, this present value should be a negative 100 because if we are investing this money today, that means that we're essentially spending it. So our money is going to go down by $100 because we've spent it on this investment. Now it's important, and we've talked about it in one of the previous problems, but the present value and the future value need to have opposite signs. One of them needs to be negative and one of them needs to be positive. Generally, if you're talking about something that you're investing in, your present value is going to be negative because you're spending money on that investment today, and the future value is going to be positive because when that investment matures or you receive the benefit from it, now your money is going up. So you can think about it that way. When you spend money on an investment, it's going down. When you receive money from an investment, your money is going up, and that is why it's positive. So let's switch over to the calculator again really quick and input these values in. Now for this next question, we're trying to find a future value. We know that n is equal to 10, so we'll type 10, put it in for n. Our interest rate per year, our annual interest rate, is also 10%, so we're just going to put in 10 again, click I per YR. The present value is 100, and I've talked about this, but I'll keep explaining it. Since we're making the investment today, that 100 actually needs to be negative, and the way we do that is there's the plus minus sign right here. I type 100, then I hit the negative sign. Now you can see that it switched to a negative 100, and I click present value. Now that's entered in. Now all that's left to do is click future value, and we see that this investment would be worth $259, almost $260 in terms of today's money, or that's what it will be worth in 10 years, excuse me. Lastly, we're going to talk about how to find an interest rate, and it is the exact same as the other problems. This one might be most applicable as businesses are often involved in different investing practices, and the way that we can compare multiple investments is if we can find the I per YR, or the interest rate, or the rate of return in this case, the rate of return that we're going to make on that investment, we can compare it against other investments. So if we make a 10% rate from one investment and we make a 20% rate from another, we'll know that we should probably end up selecting the 20% interest rate. So let's switch over to the calculator and input these values. Hopefully you can go through and read this, and on your own without looking at these, pull out the n is 20 years, the future value is 10,000, the present value is 1,000. I've talked about this already before, but that present value of 1,000 should actually be a negative 1,000 because since it's an investment today, that money is going out of our bank account, should be a negative, and the future value will be a positive 10,000. We see that it's over a 20-year period, so we're going to put in 20 and then enter it for n. Next, we know that the future value, the value that we'll be receiving in 20 years, is $10,000. So I'm going to put in 10,000 and I'm going to just put that in for the future value. It will require us to make a $1,000 investment today. Now, again, we know that we have to put in 1,000, but since we're investing it today, we're going to be giving up $1,000 for that investment. We need to change it to a negative, and then we can put that in for present value. And then we're solving for I per YR, for our interest rate, or the rate of return that we're going to make each year, and it's going to be 12.2%. So that means that each year we will be making 12.2%. Now I talked about this a little bit earlier, but if we have two investments and we can come up with how much they'll be worth at the end and how much we have to pay for them now, we can compare them. So this one's 12, and if we had another one that was bigger than 12 and it was giving us a 15% return, then we would choose the one that is 15%. Hopefully, how to use your calculator to calculate time value of money and its various components is starting to become a little bit more clear. These questions are going to mirror what is going to be seen on the homework for this week, so that you're going to get a lot of practice using your calculator and also just starting to try and identify the different elements that go into figuring out what you should be putting in for the values and time value of money so that you can do this on your own. And that should be all.